Vuelvo al ruedo con las entrevistas en este 2022 con una que votaron en mi cuenta de Instagram. Free Guy para mí fue una de las mejores películas que nos dejó el año pasado. Es muy difícil adaptar el mundo de los videojuegos a la pantalla grande y creo que esta película lo hizo muy bien. Uno de los responsables fue Tobman, que fue el diseñador de producción de esta película, que me contó cómo fue que pensaron y cuánto fue que se involucró Ryan Reynolds en este peliculón llamado Free Guy.
We now return to Mira Akien and Contre with our latest interview.
It's a project of your dreams. You know, you get a call to interview for a movie like that, and you think it's never going to happen. You're never going to get the job. There's so many more experienced people who are going up for it, and you know, the director told me like you're the dark horse in the running before I interviewed, and I think, you know, to their surprise, I walked away from the first interview with them thinking like it's going to be hard not maybe to hire me, because I'd spent a month drawing that city and researching the rules, and I showed up with concept art and hundreds of images of references that were really left field. None of this would have been possible without Sean and Zach and Ryan Reynolds, Zach Penn, the writer, without their ability to crack the riddle. How do you get people to care about an artificially intelligent person in an artificial world? How do you get non-gamers to empathize with and understand the rules, but then get gamers who are like the hardest, most discerning audience of visual media to not hate it? They were incredible guides at figuring out how to get a 4-quadrant popcorn movie to explore like really complex existential ideas in a funny way. And they all brought their different pieces of the puzzle to it. But one thing that Sean and I agreed on immediately was there need to be really strong visual rules for the video game, the game inside the game, and the world outside of the game. We need to have a really strong visual identity so the audience immediately understands when we're in one versus the other. Inside the game, it's clean. All the surfaces are non-reflective. It never rains. There's a really limited color palette. There's pastels. There's no pure primaries.
Oh, Mondays, am I right, Joe?
You said it, guy.
Outside the world, the colors are confusingly murky. There's gray on gray and gray, different grades. There's clutter. It rains. Frames are asymmetrical. We're handheld instead of on smooth techno and Steadicams. And it just feels a little messy. You know, it feels a little hard to navigate. So immediately that was one of the things we latched onto. And then from there, we got really existential. I had a field day early on. What's his apartment going to look like? And I had this really clear idea of him being sort of like Chauncey Gardner in Being There in some of the 70s movies where people are half-developed characters. You know, in those movies, they're representing like the political fragmentation of America caught in a Vietnam War, and then in the sort of gross rampant capitalism of Wall Street, and feeling like really disconnected from the white picket fed's dream. And I think Ryan Reynolds in Free Guy feels like a cog in the machine. He's completely inconsequential, and he suspects, like so many of us do, that there's more to life than this, and that he's not living something authentic. So I latched onto that and had this great existential exploration of like what his apartment would look like. So he has no forks or knives because he only eats cereal, so he only has spoons. He has a calendar on the wall that's missing a Tuesday. He has books on his bookshelf that are nameless. They have no titles on them. And he has 5 locks on his door, but no doorknob. He never actually needs to leave.
God, this isn't you. You don't do this, man. Maybe I do.
For me, it was more the movies and the photography and the books that influenced me. The script is clearly a riff on Grand Theft Auto.
Yeah.
It's, you know, it's a hyper-violent meta universe multiplayer game that is sort of gleeful about the violence, but it's also harmless. And it's also like a commentary, I think, how gratuitous violence has become in our society and in movies in general. So I can't start with that. I've got to go in different directions to make the world feel layered and real and create empathy. That being said, I do love playing video games. It's one of my favorite ways to decompress. And at the premiere, I sat down next to Ninja, who is, you know, like the #1 Fortnite player in the world. We became fast friends, and he and I both talked about the game Shadow of Colossus, where you spend huge amounts of the game like riding on a horse in the middle of nowhere, and it creates this weird existential feeling of alienation. You're so alone. You're like riding and riding, trying to find the next plot, and sometimes you don't find it for a long time, and you kind of just like have to sit with yourself, and it's uncomfortable. And then Red Dead Redemption 2 feels that way for me too, where you're like, you're in a film noir and you're following a Western, but you're like also, you're really out there by yourself, cowboy without a land. And that's kind of how Guy feels for some of the movies. So I think, funny enough, I think video games influence movies. I think movies influence video games. I think it's cyclical. It's hard to say, you know, which one's the chicken or the egg at this point. And for me, all I can do as a filmmaker is respond to how things make me feel.
Who put a flavor grenade in my mouth? Pull the pin.
I read a quote once where Ryan said he's an art director who happens to be an actor. Ryan's like the most masterful marketing, image creating, tonal genius I think I've ever worked with. He's so much more than just an actor. Not that an actor's not a lot, but Ryan wrote, riffed on, improvised more than I'm aware of. And my goal in designing this was to make him laugh and raise an eyebrow, and, you know, make him think in moments that we were as smart as he was, because he's really smart. So, you know, we had a field day embedding little things for him, but then he would riff on them and make them better. We had a coffee shop where the joke is like, there's hardly anything to order because these are unimportant characters who are really there to serve as background action for main characters. So our coffee shop has flavors like, you know, hot coffee, good coffee, bad coffee, very, very hot coffee, very, very bad coffee, not coffee. And, you know, Ryan showed up that day and he just like riffed on it and said, hey, here's 5 more ideas. Can you throw them in there? So that was my closest relationship with him. But he and Sean, you know, Sean's also very, very bright, very funny, and very in tune, I think, with what audiences are looking for and how they should feel at any moment. It's kind of remarkable to be around 2 people like that who are doing their first movie together and are probably going to do many, many movies together. They already have done a second one, because they just make each other better and they make you better. Yeah. Ryan is he's a force of nature, and even the way he marketed the movie, which I think is a huge puzzle piece to why it was so successful, is such a clear vindication of like what Ryan brings to a project, which is so much more than just acting on screen.